Welcome back to episode 13 of the Closing Time podcast with Travis Blayton.
Brian Prawl.
And we got a special guest with us today. He is my best friend, my member guest golf partner. We grew up together. Pat Blewett, he's a financial advisor with Edward Jones, and we got him on with us today to ask some investing question and knowledge.
I'm a little offended that he's your best friend and I'm not.
I mean, I've known him longer than you, bro.
Yeah.
And he's good at golf, so he can be my member guest partner, and you're terrible.
It's true. It's true. All right, let's get right to it. We have some questions for Pat, but
Sure.
why don't you just give us a little bit of background on
Yep.
you and where you come from, why you do what you do, and all
Yeah.
that.
So I went to Carolinas, studied investment finance while I was there, and had the good fortune of graduating from college in 2008. So the same year Travis did, in a very difficult job market. Unemployment was north of 10%. But I studied investment finance, as I mentioned, and knew that I wanted to serve as a financial advisor from the time I was a junior or senior in high school. Recognized that there's gaps in wealth, and wasn't necessarily because of gaps of intelligence. It was just gaps of access to information. So I felt like I had an opportunity to work with people in my community and outside of it to try to help them change the narrative on their financial situation.
What he's not telling you is that he grew up in Florence, South Carolina, which was our competition. So I played against him in
High school golf.
high
That's
school
right.
golf,
Yeah.
and I cut that ass.
Did he?
Depending on the day. What I remember about Travis, he had the long sideburns that came down to about here.
The pork chops, baby.
He might have had a soul patch. And
Is that this?
yeah, it just swang out of his shoes. The chops are gone. The soul patch, I guess, is kind of gone, but he still swings out of his shoes.
What's funny about Travis is that he claims to be pretty good at golf, and I think he's okay.
Yeah.
But he can't putt for shit. So
Yeah.
is that true from him in his youth? Or is that
It's
just
been that
something
way
like
since day
developed?
one.
Yeah, I don't remember the putting being a massive liability back then. Hits it as far as you want.
I played for the first time since like November on Sunday, and I had north of 35 putts. It was a train wreck.
So when we play in this member guest, you can concede putts, and pretty quickly, most of the matches we have, Travis will put it out to 2 or 3 feet left, and the guys are saying, "Hey, we're going to need to see that." You're not hearing a whole lot of, "Hey, man, pick that up."
Yeah,
We're going to want to watch that.
That's a fact.
All right, so you got in because you wanted to help people.
Yep.
Yeah.
You saw a wealth gap. How are people closing the wealth gap today, or what kind of advice are you giving to people that come to see you and our clients?
Have a game plan. It's really intimidating to say, "Hey, I'm making a little bit more money than I'm used to. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with it. I know what I want for my family, and I know what I want for myself 10 or 15 years down the road, but I don't know how to get from where I'm at today to where I want to be in the future." And I think that's one of the main values of having a financial advisor is they can sit down with you and kind of find out how fast you're willing to drive to get where you want to go. Investing in the S&P 500 is not for everybody. You need to be prepared for certainly, good years where you might be up 10, 15, 20%, but there's going to be a year or two in your career where you're going to have, a down 25 or down 30% year. And one of the questions that we ask when we're onboarding a prospective client is, the value of your account fell by 25% or more in a year. How would you react? And, the boxer Mike Tyson had a phrase. He said, "Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth." And that's, I think, appropriate for investing too. And that you can say, "Hey, if the market went down 25%, I'd roll with it and maybe even add a little bit more money." But, when you're in the thick of it, it's really tough to kind of quiet some of those negative thoughts without having a financial advisor to explain the larger context of what's actually going on.
From personal experience, I can tell you that we got punched in the mouth in 2022.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I had any, discernible assets invested.
Sure.
So it was a big gut punch for me.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like it's easy to say when things are going well,
Mhm.
"Oh, I'm looking forward to that because the stocks that I like are cheaper and I can buy more." But when you're in the middle of it, you just don't see an end in sight.
Right.
And so you're like, do I want to catch the falling knife? Do I want to add more?
Yeah.
So I advise clients, and not in your capacity, but we do some cursory, higher level, basic. Hey, you need to invest. You should do all these things in budget. We advise dollar cost averaging. Just always be in the market. Is that bad advice? Is that good advice?
Great advice. So, oftentimes we'll have people come to us and they're starting out. It might be the son or daughter of a current client, and they want to know, how do I get started? And one of the things when I first got into financial advising is, I wanted to know, how did this person sitting across the desk from me get to where they're at right now? And I had this notion that, they had to make a lot of money, year in, year out. It must have been making $600,000 or $700,000 a year. Maybe they inherited a ton of money. And certainly there's cases where that happens. But a lot of the time it was a guy that, might have made $70,000, $80,000 a year. But he was consistent with the way he saved. So I was looking before I got here today at a hypothetical. Now, the S&P 500 going back over the past 50 years has averaged 11.99% per year. That's with the dividends reinvested back in. So if you had a 25-year-old that was just getting started and they had $1,000 that they could open an account with, but they committed to adding $500 every month for the next 40 years. Now, that is also easier said than done. That doesn't mean, hey, the market's not doing well, I'm going to take a break, or, I want to go buy a truck and I'm going to pivot the payment that I was making to myself to the truck. You're being consistent with the way you save. You would have around $4.9 million by the time you were 65 years old and itching for retirement. Again, younger people, I tell them the biggest weapon they have in wealth creation is the runway they have until the time they're going to need it. If that person waited 10 more years, so as a 35-year-old, maybe at this point they've got, a wife and a couple kids, the cost of waiting those 10 years is close to $3.4 million. So
you go from 4.9
to
1.5.
1.5.
Yeah.
So you put $241,000 in your initial 1,000 plus 6,000 a year over 40 years. And again, average annual growth of the S&P 500. There's going to be stretches where it doesn't make 11.99%. There's going to be stretches of probably 2 or 3 years where it's actually lower, but staying committed. And that's, again, the easier said than done part. Are you, cheating yourself and trimming back when the market's not doing well? Are you, justifying in your head, hey, I'd rather spend this on something fun today instead of securing my family's financial future down the road? And that, for a lot of people, is easier said than done, to stay committed to a plan.
And I think when you start earlier, it builds that discipline up, because there's tons of things that you don't think about that happen. Like, you have kids.
Yeah.
All right. So now I need to start 529 plan, or save for college if you don't want to do a 529 plan. There's another principle that you need to be disciplined at, tucking those funds away for that.
Yeah.
And so having a plan not to stop the original $500, because you want that to keep building, adding additional streams that you need to add to pots too.
And for most people, it gets easier to save as you get older. I'm using
Typically, because you're going to make more money as
right. Now you're going to buy more stuff,
Yeah.
but that example, $500 a month, would be representative of somebody that's saving 10% of their income on a entry level-ish job, so making $60,000 a year. So that assumes that all you did for 40 years was just sock away $500 a month. That doesn't factor in anything you might inherit. It doesn't factor in any raises that you're going to get. You might start contributing to your company's 401k plan, and they might be kind enough to match 3 or 4% of your contributions. So that's just if you kept the same job, same income, same savings over 40 years, you'd be fine. But again, if you wait 10 more years until it's a little bit easier, maybe you're a little bit more mature, the cost there is pretty massive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one thing that I learned from personal experience, I didn't start at 23, 24, 25. So I had to use real estate as a vehicle to catch myself up.
Yeah.
And so, bought a couple investment properties. They appreciated, was able to sell those, roll that into accounts to help me play catch up. So I mean, I
Sure.
think for a new investor or a young person wanting to start that wealth building journey,
Hmm.
you know, the earlier you can start, I think is like the best advice I think we could give anybody.
I mean, if anybody's looking for personal experience on mistakes people have made, talk to me.
Yeah.
When I graduated college, which was a little bit earlier than y'all, 2003, had a great job at a company that
I
was
wasn't
cool.
done high school by then, by the way. You're
I was,
old,
I
bro.
was a junior in high
You
school.
were still missing putts though.
Yeah.
So I worked and we had a great 401k plan, like one that was so awesome that my dad didn't even believe it was real. But they would match 250% of our contribution. I would put in $1, they would put in 250.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
How long did it take to vest?
5 years.
Okay.
But I worked there for 7 years,
Yeah.
and it was great.
This is all your money.
Except that I'm such a freaking idiot. I quit that job in 2010, and it was the same year that my wife went back to school. So we were what do they call them, DINK, dual income, no kids.
Yeah.
And we were making pretty good money for our age. It was great, all the stuff. I quit my job to become a loan officer. Great market to do that. 2010, like 2 years post crash, it was like literally the month after I became a loan officer. I saw a report later on that that January was the lowest number of transactions in Columbia history ever. So I'm like, so I went from good income to zero income. I literally made $18,000 that first year.
The only way up was up.
Incorrect. It ended up being a blessing. But the point I'm making is I had $40,000 at that point in a 401k.
Yeah.
And cashed it out, all of it, so I could live. And it wasn't because I needed to make the mortgage payment. It was because I liked going to the bars.
Yeah.
And I was a 26-year-old, whatever. I was an idiot.
Yeah.
So I imagine what I would have if I had not ever done that.
Yeah.
And the reason I think I'm a little bit less optimistic on real estate as a vehicle is because I bought 2 investment properties that were like really cheap, like $15,000 trash houses, in order to get rental income to support my lifestyle at the
Got
time.
what you paid for.
So 100% got what I paid for. Like,
Well, I mean, so you can't blame real estate.
I can't blame real estate. I can blame
correct
personal
investment.
choices.
Yeah.
The advice that I would give based on personal experiences is don't do what I did. It was
Yeah.
awful. Like I literally would have, however, I don't know, we can do the math on that, but
Probably shouldn't.
I don't want to. I don't want to
Ruin your
cry. But when I talk to kids, my own children or any younger person,
Yeah.
I've got a 21-year-old working here, and I'm like, look, it is a requirement for you to contribute to your 401k and save money here,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to let you make the mistake that I made.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at her example. Like, she's 21. Maddie, she's great. She just bought a house. We've talked about her before, but she's 21. I mean, she's 4 years younger than the example you just gave.
Yeah.
That
gives her at a 12% or 11.99 return, almost another double. So she
Yeah.
could have $9 million if
that's
she
if-
only saves
That's
$500
all
a
she
month.
did.
Right.
Yeah. Now, again, it's far down the road, but, and the other thing I wanted to get to is the impact inflation would have. The cost of doing hidden cost of doing nothing is that at standard inflation rates, which has trended around 3% historically, by the time, somebody that was 25 years old today turns 65, what would cost them $36 in 2026 would cost them $100. So $4.9 million in this example does not carry the same power
Yeah.
as $4.9 million does in 2026. It would be akin to having around 1.6 or $1.7 million. And again, that is a great,
Well, yeah.
great retirement.
So I guess along that point, we had a comment on one of our podcasts at one point where somebody in the comment section was arguing against investing because of inflation. And conceptually, that's mind blowing to me, because it seems like it would just be more important to invest.
Yeah. As opposed to like CDs or savings or doing real estate
It was just a troll.
yeah, you can just look over the last 5 years. You don't have to look at 40 years. Inflation, would cost 81 cents back in 2021, cost $1 now. It's, a pretty big gap in a relatively short period of time. Now that was, outside the norm. I think we were 8.5% at one point.
Yep.
Inflation in 2022. And it's cooled down since then. But your money, if you dig it a hole in the backyard and you bury it there, it's going to buy you a lot less when you take the dirt off the top of the money than it does when you put it in.
One thing we can almost guarantee is that things 30 years from now are not going to be less expensive than they are
Absolutely
today.
Yeah.
Right? It's just, if it is, we've got major problems.
Yeah.
What we're talking about
We don't
becomes
want that.
irrelevant. Correct.
The parallel I use a lot of times with, especially older clients, to drive home the point of inflation is I'll ask them, what did you pay for your first house? And they'd say, well, I paid, $50,000 for this house in Shandon back in, 1965 or 1970. And I'll ask them, what'd you pay for your last car? And they would say about the same amount of money. And it kind of communicates the point, hey, real estate has an opportunity to create a lot of wealth, but also the value of, steering wheel and four wheels versus, four walls and a roof. Even
And a
themselves out of the-
depreciating
yeah,
asset.
yeah, right.
That car will be worth zero at some point.
Yeah.
Very quickly. Yeah. 7 or 8 years.
And your house will likely not. I mean,
Right.
it will be going up.
But oftentimes people, say, oh, I want to go buy, the new truck or the new boat or, depreciating asset at the cost of saving or at the cost of, buying a new home. And again, a new car, a new boat's a lot of fun. Not, so practical, but
I talk to my kids a lot about a concept. We just talk about delayed gratification.
yeah,
And that's a good example of it. Like the gratification that comes immediately from the new car or new boat is there and you scratch that itch, but then it dwindles very rapidly.
Yeah.
And if you can just delay that gratification by investing that money or saving it or something besides that, now there's nothing wrong with new cars or new boats. Like I think they're great. But not at the expense of your future lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about new investors or younger generations. Let's talk about, what's one mistake or the biggest mistake you may see in high income earners or high net worth people.
Mhm.
What's those mistakes that you kind of see in that area
Yeah.
in what you do?
Not all that different than the younger advisor, or I'm sorry, younger client that I might advise saving. A lot of them don't save the way they're able to. In a lot of cases, you might have somebody that's making, $3, $4, $500,000 and still living paycheck to paycheck. More money, more problems. I mean, find a way to fall victim to the lifestyle creep of,
Yep.
hey, my buddy down the road, put a pool in, or they bought a vacation home or whatever, and you feel like you have to keep up. And I think a lot of times, the rat race is what a lot of higher income people fall victim to.
Gotcha.
Which is tough. I mean, again, we all want nice things, and
Yep.
it's hard to tell somebody that has the means to get those nice things to defer it. But you want to also make sure that you're putting yourself in a position or your family in a position where they're going to be a little bit better off than maybe you were when you were coming up.
Do you get into with your clients, do you get into like tax strategy advising, or is this
Yeah.
strictly like, okay, so talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
So yeah, we'll look at, what's the difference if you maxed out your wife's retirement account. Maybe, wife stays home, you run a business, you're married filing joint, you have an opportunity to fund some money into an IRA for her. Well, that might save you, at your tax rate, maybe it's 22, 23%. That saves you X amount of dollars in money that you won't owe the IRS for the state of, here we're in South Carolina. We also look at charitable giving, how that can impact things. Now with the standard deduction going up here over the last several years, it's harder to itemize, but folks that are over 73 years old have to take distributions from their retirement account every year, and that hits their tax form as income. So if we're able to redirect those back to a charity, maybe they tithe to their church instead of doing it out of a checking account, we're doing it out of the retirement account. You can make a pretty big impact there. But yeah, for people our age, I think college accounts and maxing out or doing as much as you can towards a retirement account are the two biggest tools that you're going to have to limit your tax obligation.
I argue with Trip and Travis sometimes about, I don't know what side of this you actually fall on, but in your advice to clients, do you lean more towards traditional IRAs or 401ks or Roth?
Depends on the person. So if it's somebody that's starting out and they're, in a sales career like you guys are, eventually they're going to get to a point where they're not able to fund a Roth. Their income is going to be make them ineligible to fund a Roth. So I would tell that person, hey, while you can, let's squeeze as much money into this thing as we can. Roth's kind of neat too, in the sense that you can use it for first-time home buyer. You can take money out of it, penalty and tax free to use against the down payment of your first home. You can use it for, really other severe emergencies too. But if you are somebody that's, making a pretty nice income, traditional IRA helps you out in the sense that you're able to shave off from your total income the amount that you contributed to the retirement account. So if you think tax rates are going to be higher in the future, your income's going to be higher in the future, a Roth IRA makes a ton of sense. If you're somebody that's a higher earner now that just doesn't have the luxury of having an employer sponsored plan offered to them, then looking at a traditional IRA is probably a better fit.
So look at Travis or I, like just in a real example, we have a company sponsored 401k plan that we could choose Roth or traditional, and we are likely not in a position where we can do a traditional IRA, right?
Yeah,
So
you're not.
if you're me at 45 years old, where are you putting your money?
So you can look at brokerage, just sock it into a
I mean,
brokerage account.
traditional or Roth.
Traditional Roth. Well, you're going to be ineligible for a Roth, so you could
I'm not
convert.
ineligible for my Roth 401k.
Right, so you can convert from the 401k to the Roth 401k. You can do Roth conversion. So another strategy is, let's say we had a market pullback. 2020 is a great example where the market lost 40% over a stretch of 5 or 6 weeks. You can take investments in that retirement account and convert them in kind to a Roth. So back then, like the airlines, the cruise lines were getting killed because nobody was able to travel. You could have taken Carnival stock, or you could have taken American Airlines stock and converted it after it was down 50 or 60% to a Roth, and then you let the stock recover in an account that you're not going to be responsible for paying the taxes on. So yeah, I mean, a Roth 401k would make some sense for a guy like you. If you have separate income outside of Palmetto Mortgage, let's say you had a coaching business or something along those lines, you could form a SEP IRA and contribute that money to a SEP. The limit on a SEP IRA is going to be higher than that of a 401k. This year, I think it's 23,500 or so. If you're over 50, it's a little over 30,000. So
Cool. You had a list of questions that you were going to
Yeah.
ask Pat, I believe, right?
Yeah. Let's see. We've talked about before, kind of in our industry, what people most misunderstand about loan officers, mortgage industry, that sort of thing. So, kind of pose the same question to you. What's something most people misunderstand about financial advisors?
yeah, I think TV and movies have kind of painted a picture of a financial advisor as a guy that's sitting in an office, in a high, glass building, and he's buy this, sell that, and it's super busy throughout the course of the day. A lot of activity as far as trading goes, and it's not the case. I mean, my office is in a I want to say residential area. It's on Divine Street, downtown Columbia. We're across the street from a fire station and a wedding dress place. We're in the community. But most of my day is spent talking to clients about events that they've had come up in their life. So it might be, hey, my daughter's getting married this summer and we need to try to come up with some money to pay for that. Or, my mom's moving in with us. She's having some health problems and we need to find out how, taking on that expense is going to impact our ability to retire. And then learning a little bit more about what their willingness for risk tolerance is. Like I said, so everybody, you might say, hey, I want to be aggressive. And your definition of aggressive might be Travis's definition of conservative. So my job is to try to understand, how are you going to react when things go sideways? And do we have a blend of investments that are reflective of, how much volatility you're willing to tolerate? But it's not, a lot of people just have this assumption of, we're analysts. I'm not an analyst. We have very brilliant people in our home office that do the hard work of digesting economic reports and looking at earnings calls and making recommendations on which stocks to buy, hold, or sell. My job is to talk to, the 25-year tenured teacher that's looking at possibly retiring, or, the 40-something that's going through divorce and doesn't know what the path is forward financially for them, and trying to make sense of what they need to do.
Good. Okay. I want to shift it to having, bringing more real estate mortgage side of things into the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote down a couple more questions. Should someone prioritize investing in the market or buying real estate first? Your opinion.
Depends on where they're at. Like buying real estate as a 20-something-year-old, depending on where you're at in the country, is not a reachable goal. Here in Lexington and Columbia, I think it's very obtainable for a middle income to lower middle income family to be able to do that. It goes back to how long are you going to be here? If you're in a job that's going to be somewhat transient, I think it'd probably be a better idea to rent. If you're got ties to the area, and whether you're in the current job or not, you're going to be here. I think there's a lot of value in buying a home and building up equity. I just sold a home. We're on the doorstep of selling the home, fingers crossed, but had it for 10 years and had about 60 to 70% price appreciation in it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was money I didn't really have to sweat out, but there's also the side that I don't have ready access to that money. In other words, maybe I can, but I can't take my equity in my home and have access to it the following day if things go sideways, where I can do that with investment accounts.
You could get a home equity line.
Yeah.
You could get, what's the turnaround on those? Is it?
Oh
still pretty
yeah,
quick?
to your point. Yeah, I mean, once you get it in place, you can have access to it
Right.
the next
Yeah.
day, but it would take 3 weeks, 4 weeks to
Yeah.
get it done. So that's a good point.
Which leads me to a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Because we are entering into a time in what we do where we're starting to see rates trend down, and clients are wanting to have conversations on rate term refis, just reducing their interest rate, or having conversations on, well, I've owned my house for 5, 6, 7 years.
Mhm.
We've gone through one of the largest appreciation times in real estate.
Yeah.
They ask a question, or I get asked often, should I pull equity out to invest in stock market or build a 401k or start a 401k, this sort of thing. From a financial advisor standpoint, what's your thoughts on?
Don't love that.
You don't love that?
Love that.
You're not even allowed to advise people to do that, I would assume, right?
No.
Well, that's why I'm asking I get asked that question.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got an email in my email box this morning
Yeah.
from a guy that works at a big company. He's a leader there, asking me that very question. We bought our house in 2019.
Yeah.
I'm looking at numbers online. I've got this amount of equity that I'm thinking about there. Do you advise that I pull that out and invest it elsewhere? Like, I have that. That's a real question that I got to answer today.
And again, is that guy prepared for the following year? He could be down 20% on that money that he took out of the value of his home.
And he's paying 7.5%, 8% on
Yeah.
taking this down.
Right. I mean, so it compounds the problem. Is he prepared for that? If he's prepared for that, then I'd feel a little bit easier. But if he's one of those people that says, "Gosh, if I was down 20%, I'd probably sell and move to cash," then absolutely not.
Okay.
I tell people all the time, hey, if you've got a 3.5% mortgage, back in the throes of COVID, Travis refinanced us down to 2.875%. And I have people come in
I
all
would
the
have gotten
time.
you 2.5.
You might have, yeah. But we ended up, kind of staying on the same track to pay that house off. Had the means to pay it off or more aggressively, but recognized, hey, my mortgage is only costing me less than 3%. I've done a better job than that on managing our own family money. Why would I take money out of this pot that's growing at 7 or 8% on average, maybe more, to pay down a pot that's 2.875%? And we get people come to us all the time asking, hey, I have the means to pay off my mortgage. Should I do it? And I'll tell them, what's your mortgage? And they'll say it's 3.5 or 4. And I'll say, man, I would crawl over glass right now if I could borrow money at 3.5 or 4% and invest it. So it doesn't really make sense to take money that's already invested and apply it against a lower interest rate loan like that.
I work with, and Travis does too, we work financial advisors like you are referral partners for us.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we'll get higher net worth clients, and we have a product that a lot of financial advisors use. I wonder what your advice would be. So a lot of the conversations I have is, hey, Brian, can you help this client of mine out? He's got whatever, a lot of assets liquid, and he wants to pay cash for his house. What is your advice on paying cash for a house in that scenario, even if you're borrowing money at 6.5%?
Well, I mean, it goes back to you're going to be able to deduct some of the interest. You're not forfeiting over, a lot of your wealth to be tied up in a home. So it's 6.5%. Again, if it's somebody that's going to be there for the foreseeable future and is going to have an opportunity to refinance, a year or 2, 3 years down the road, I think it makes a lot of sense to hang on to your cash and borrow the money at 6 or 6.5%. Again, you might be 2 or 3 years out from a reduction of 1.5% in the interest rate. And I think when we did our refinance back in 2021, I had done the math on the expenses on it and figured out I would be better than break even, I think 18 months to 2 years after we did the closing.
No, I mean, it would have been much less then because of
I went from like
the
4.75
step down.
to
Yeah.
maybe 3.5. I went somewhere in that area down to 2.875%.
Yeah.
I don't think I framed my question in the right way. I guess my thought on what I was trying to lead you to answering, whether this is good advice or not, from my perspective, in these particular clients' cases, what it seemed to me to make more sense, because a lot of people like the concept of having no mortgage payment or housing payment, but the cost of that is liquidating invested assets,
Yeah.
paying whatever capital gains tax you are. In this one borrower's case, it was like 40 grand in capital gains tax he would have paid. From your perspective, you lose assets under management at that point.
Yeah.
And so it's like a lose all the way around. So the thought process was use leverage on the real estate.
Yeah.
Your return on your investment. So let's say you put 20% down. If your house goes up 10% over X amount of years, you've only invested 20% at that point down. So you just got a 50% return on your investment.
Yeah.
If you had paid cash for the house, let's call it 300,000, like you're putting 300 grand into the equity, and if it goes up 10%, you made 30 grand or 10% ROI instead of 50%. So like from a math perspective, at least on paper, it seems to me to make more sense to use leverage if you're comfortable with the expense of the payment.
And if you're going to be able to qualify for, a reasonable loan, we're assuming, somebody that has above average credit that's going to get some kind of interest rate in that ballpark. But yeah, I mean, if you can get, 6% or so, it makes sense to take out the mortgage loan. And if you have to down the road, you can pay the mortgage out of growth from the stock account if things get kind of lean. Maybe your, wife lost her job, or, business isn't quite as strong one year to the next and you need a little bit of help. You could take money out from growth. We have people, you brought up the question before we started recording about, is it ever not right for somebody to own a home? And there's cases, I think where it makes sense to rent. We talked about earlier, if you were somebody that had a job that might not have them in the same location for the foreseeable future, it might make sense to just hold your nose and rent. We'll have, from time to time, clients that are 75, closer to 80 years old, and maybe the house has got a little bit too big for them. And they're talking about buying a house. Should I go through the process of getting a mortgage or just paying cash outright? And in a lot of cases, it doesn't really make sense. That person, their health might turn and they might be in a position where they're not able to stay in the home. They might need access to more of their funds. So a lot of times what we'll do is say, you sell the house, you're moving into, maybe it's assisted living, or maybe it's just a townhome or an apartment. We're going to peel out, $2,000 a month from this pot of money that you got from selling your house to pay the rent. You still maintain flexibility on, where you're going to live, who's paying for the repairs. If you want to move closer to grandkids, you can do that and not have to worry about going through the process of selling. But I think every other situation, if you have the means to buy a house and you're looking to create wealth, it makes sense to do so.
Well, I appreciate you joining us.
Yeah.
We
Thanks for having me.
enjoyed having you. I think we had.
I think we're going to need to have you back at some point. You killed it. I appreciate it very much. Yeah.
And
Long time listener, first time caller. So I enjoyed my time here.
we'll have him back the week after member guest, and we'll do some recap of
Set our trophy right there on the
how
coffee
member
table.
guest
And,
goes.
We need to have them back the next time they run a market turmoil report.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we will close out episode 13, and we'll catch everybody next time. If you have questions for us, if you have comments for Pat, drop those below. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks, fellas.